Gaeilge Weekly is brought to you by Learn Irish Online. For way more shows, videos, podcasts and courses for learning the language, head to learnirishonline.com or patreon.com/learnirishonline.
You've been the best at times, you walk me through my darkest days. Why must I turn around? I ask myself. This just ain't fair, so hard to bear. I'm not really sure these days. You walk away, you don't
Good morning. Madsen wa Trononama. Good afternoon. How are we all doing? Conas atá mud galéir. Before I start the podcast, Riv a hostium on Podgraile. May just to give you a raw, I'm doing this episode on Tuesday morning. The other two I did yesterday and Monday morning. So what happened in Liverpool hadn't happened at that point. Cabhrú i larfol ní sé tarlíthe ag an buinte sin. So just to say, praying that hopefully everyone is okay. Ag chuig my gach in a cearcalóir agus. Yeah, not much else to say. Níl mór another really the raw, so sad what happened. So sad the incident that happened in Liverpool yesterday called Bronach. Cabhrú agus Gnáthleagan a Harla i larfol and just hoping that people are going to be okay and going to be able to make a full recovery. So good bishop gach in a galua. Agus go mbeidh gach duine cearcalóir. But anyway, I won't speak more about that for the rest of the show. Ní an Lord's vision arís sa show, but I said I'll say it at the start before I forget. Tá mé hunna sin rá ag tú some fodcéile riv a dhéanam darma there. Anyway, how are we all doing? Consultámud scaléir an tachtain seo. Very happy to be back chatting to you from a very hot Seville, so on sásta bheith arásig level Seville an the te. Tá misig tafdú lahar taréis a je madjin. So I'm recording 10:30 in the morning, and I'll tell you what temperature it already is this early in the morning. Well, 24 degrees, not too bad. Cara chemis feha, but later on it's going to be 36. Tomorrow on Thursday, 38. So work agus an Déanta Trchahocht. So the heat is kicking in. Although I don't think it should last, I think it should drop down again over the next 2 weeks. Ceapan go bhain sé beagganín níos lú níos ísle an tachtain sa thugan agus an cúpla seachtain inia sin. But all is good here. No major news. No more on nuacht, really. I want to talk a little bit about today. Well, a few different things which I'm going to get into. Couple of rod éagsúil agus the dullas shachs and ruddy sin anish. But I'm going to use as a kind of jumping off point to talk about Sunday. So it's a dhaoine. And it was quite a big day for motorsport. Now don't worry, if you're not interested in motorsport, Muna will simagat motorsport. This show isn't going to be all about Formula 1 or anything like that. So you don't need to know anything about it. Ní caithíon rud a bheith arólas agat faoi. But I was watching, I mentioned motorsport because it was a big day for motorsport on Sunday. Lá more of an on Gaeilge like motorsport, like Formula 1, not freshen category Ella, so other categories, other disciplines of sport. Because basically in motorsport, there's this thing called the Triple Crown. So to roll down Darvanam on Triple Crown. And those are the kind of three biggest races, the three Ross Ismo in all of motorsport. Okay, motorsport BHFAD. So you have the Monacó Grand Prix, which takes place in Monacó, but in Formula 1, in the sport of Formula 1. So in Grand Prix in Monacó, Wiener Schul Formula 1. chumhpháirtíocht, as well as that, you have the 24 hours of Le Mans, a big endurance race that, yes, goes on for 24 hours. Marin Serfa, Kera or Is Feha. So that takes place, I think, around June or July. I'm making around Harry sometime during the summer in France. And that's a, 24-hour race. Drivers don't have to do the full 24 hours. There's 3 drivers in each team. Tá Tror Tamánihe in Knockfern. And they'll do 2 or 3 hour shifts and keep swapping over it. And they'll see the bits are gone. The 3 hour clig sa chur. Agus an sin gen she'd swap. Afraíon seed. Na Tamánihe. Agus Marsinja and so on. So that's on June or July. That's in World Endurance Racing. So that's a different category. Nothing to do with Formula 1. Ní bhain sé leis on Formula 1 ar chorbe. And then you have the Indy 500 over in IndyCar in the US. So sin on Indianapolis 500. So then is she'd 2,000 míle in Law 1. They do 500, well, not even in Law 1, in a few hours. It's so fast. So she'd call tappy Shane. The cars are that fast that it only takes about 3 hours or so. And the Hogan say at Carter 3 or click done Indy 500. I've been there shul in Indianapolis and Stalchaintia that takes place, so that just be going on in Indianapolis in the US. But the weird thing is, the strange thing is, Rud éisteacht agus an Rud Ranver, the kind of funny enough thing about it is that the Indy 500 and the Monaco Grand Prix, so two of, if not the two biggest races in motorsport. So an dá Ross no cean san dá Ross is mó sa motorsport. Bín si their shul around Law Canis. They take place on the same day. And that was this past Sunday that they were both on Sunday. They weren't on at the exact same time because of the time difference. So mBéarla and Tifreach you had the Monaco Grand Prix on about 2 hours after it finished. Gá or Threishtó Chreithnú Hussey on Indy 500. The Indy 500 started about 2 or 3 hours after it finished. And I was watching both of those. I only watched the end of the Indy because I'm not too really interested in the Indy, and it all comes down to the final few laps anyway. Every time, you go on the tagan sé an iscusí an chúpla lap déarnach an sinnig déire an Ross. I wasn't too interested in a number of simam aun. But I was watching all the Monaco Grand Prix, so much more into Formula 1. We make vacants Aaron Grand Prix on sin in Monaco, mar tome oadni scafa leshin. And Monaco's a very interesting place. I mean, it was never there. Odds on a simul in Monaco. I mean, around my own rave. But there's something, obviously it's a micronation. I think it's the second smallest country in the world, or the third smallest country in the world. Ceapan Gould say mar on Darat is lower down, on Striút is lower down. Very, very small. You could probably walk across it inside an hour. Chance mag gomech to an hour. Shul Trasna, Monaco, fad Tivas or Owan. But as well as that, just the glamour and how much it builds its image and reputation on chuid. It's like a Hogan say a chuid's clú agus call just from its image and from the money that's in it and the glamour of winning leis agus on evil of winning leis agus on maids arrogance atá on sin. And with Formula 1 it's especially interesting. Go hoir leis on F1 tá sé an a spatial. Because if you haven't seen a lap of the Monaco Grand Prix or the Monaco Circuit in a Formula 1 car, please do look it up. Honestly, even before listening to the rest of the podcast, if you riv éisteacht leis an Gaeilge, it's on football show, because it's probably the most famous Formula 1 race there is, or definitely the most prestigious. So Gnáthleagan, well, basically, ní héan Ross is móach, but Ceapan Ross is Callula Arenos, Eoraip blina, the biggest race during the year. It's a failure at Formula 1 in the Formula 1 calendar. And it takes place every May. And again, the walls are right beside you. There's no runoff areas. So on the bally дзir Gnáthleagan agus thosaitheoirí ní lein runoff area and no einrod mar sin. You're going so close to the wall. These tiny streets, which are barely big enough for normal cars, never mind Formula 1 cars. So beviog nach bhfuil siad chomhpháirtíocht le haid gnáthluas. Then it's like lots of few Formula 1 cars scoring that F1. Unbelievable spectacle, especially the Saturday qualifying when they're doing push laps. And because on the Sunday it's not that good normally. It's too small and too tight really for anyone to overtake. So Toshiroch here really hon overtake a yenu Augustine more on size racing really Galántacht. It's a bit of a procession, so Galántacht nine sheets in order to normally they finish in the same order that they started in mar a hussy sheet. But the Saturday when they're just trying to set fast laps and they've got a bit of space on the track, it's unbelievable to watch. So if you haven't seen a F1 onboard lap in qualifying in Monaco, look it up. Unbelievable, especially if you can get one from the helmet cam from what the driver sees. On camera atá sin an glugad all, like what the driver sees cala ekin on Tamani agus session dull simple on track while he goes around the track. Really is something incredible. I'd love to go one day and see it live. Bravalum dull live and agsay ekol. Not even the race, I wouldn't care about the race because again the race is always terrible in Monaco. We go only been on Ross chuúfásach a Monaco, nothing ever happens because there's just no space to overtake, no space to pass. Níl an spás an sin chun overtake a dhéanú nó dul thar aon duine eile ach ar an Saturn qualifying, that's the spectacle, and it's the one race a year where Saturday is more important than Sunday, and an taon Ross uair na bliana ina bhfuil an Saturn níos fearr nó níos tábhachtaí ar aonos ná an Domhnach. But it's funny with F1 because a lot of the F1 drivers actually live in Monaco. So they're racing by their own apartments and their own flats. So láinte na tamánaithe F1 tá siad ina gcónaí in Monaco. So bíonn siad ag tamán Zurich and Aca lena Orsan féin, they're driving right beside their own apartments and driving on streets that they probably walk across almost every day to go to the shop or to a restaurant. Bíonn siad ag tamán ar strádanna nó an acla strádanna ar an mín siad ag siúil beag na gach lá an dul go BHFAD nó dulgtí an tulmharga agus mar sinne. So it's an interesting one from that perspective. Obviously, these drivers aren't from Monaco, apart from one. There's one by the name of Charles Leclerc, who is actually Monegasque, and his family have lived there for generations. You know, tá a clown an sin like glúnta anús agus nis an cévad blianta anús. And how many years his family have been there, but generations, glúnta and ages up until now, an fada anús. And a lot of the other drivers, the reason they live in Monaco, well, they said there's a lot of different reasons. You're see the Gualalon, Kushna, Zefrula, but the biggest one is because they don't have to pay as much tax when they're racing around the world. And this is kind of fair enough because every race is in a different place. Marial Guil Gach Ross in Zefrula. I think if they go and do a race in Italy, they have to pay tax in Italy. And then if they go and do a race in Singapore, they have to pay tax in Singapore. So Mahin Sid Giti in Nidal, Kaishid Khancha a Iach. An sin is Singapore, agus an sin san Idal, san Stáitíntia, Sasana, an rank, well actually Neil and Ross Ranknish, there's no race in France now, but you know, the 24 or 20 places, the 20 countries around the world that host races during the year. So Kaishid Chánacha a Iach Snatíortha sin. So because of that, they do end up paying quite a bit of tax. But if you're a resident of Monaco, at least you don't have to pay any tax where you live. Matatu i the choni in Monaco airline ni chahitu ein rud a iach in Monaco. I think it's 0% tax or very low tax. Anyway, Captain will say nods von Gaid the chanacha an sin in Monaco no tashe an ishel arenos. So that's why a lot of them live there. And also it's in Europe. Most races are in Europe on chuid modes and Rossna Tashids in Europe. So it's much easier to travel around if you're in Monaco compared to if you're in the US flying transatlantic every time. You know, there's a wad ní éasca hundul Gina Ross and agus tastal timple na hot some matatu I the choni san Europe, especially somewhere like there. It's Mediterranean, it's good weather, but it's not too hot either. It's not like living here in Seville in Sula a vet the choni and so is Seville. They have Nice airport just outside the border on the French side, airport Nice. Tír Gnáthleagan an Tróran an sin ar an Tíú Francoch nó ar Híomh na Franca, so it's easy for them to get around. So it ticks kind of all the boxes, really, second say. Na Bosci ar fad dómh na tamánaithe F1. Easier said than done, of course. You have to have a lot of money to move there. Caithfí a lá an airgid a bheith ad chun dul an sin agus chun a bheith I the chónaí an sin. But if you've got it, because those guys are making 10-15 million a year, a lot of them tá chuid wad na tamánaithe ag tiile but to 10 million, no 2 million teg in eine blina. So why not live there? Don't blame them. First, fair play to them for doing so well. Fair play love as saying a covma lena sale for doing so well with their life. So it's interesting if you go there. I mean, I've not been, but I really want to go as a big F1 fan. My fan on the wards and F1 like Mahin to and sin. You can just walk around the circuit because it's not a purpose-built circuit. You know, 350 days of the year. Those are just public roads, no more than the roads, you know, outside my window here in Seville or outside the window wherever you're listening from. And they're just very tight because it's a principality, a micronations here on the Viog atá. So because of that, of course, there's no big motorways or big sprawling avenues or anything like that. And F1 car is so big as well, even if there was, that would take up a lot of the room pretty quickly. Tá an F1 tá chur F1 chomhpháirtíocht sin. You know, it's come a few matá avenue on the war ad Neil, you know, nor churn to chur F1 bhóthar no frauds cosúla sin. Nis a chomhpháirtíocht sin. It's not that big then when you put an F1 car, the size of it, people don't realise. And it's one of the issues nowadays in tracks like that, Kians and the Fibina. éarnátainna trachanna mar sin, because the cars are so big it's tough to get past because there's not as much room. Níl a méid sin spás mar alcohol na corna chomhpháir. So, apologies for the quick interruption, but every so often I do put in these inserts in the show to talk about one or two things Learn Irish Online related, and it's as targeting advertising gets, because everyone listening to the Níos Simplí and the What Níos Simplí versions, I presume, is learning the language. So, just a quick reminder, on patreon.com/Learn Irish Online, there's two things you can do if you are interested in supporting Learn Irish Online, but more importantly, getting more features, more podcasts, more shows, more videos, and just more material overall to help you improve at your own Irish, both in terms of listening, speaking, writing, and reading. You can sign up to the Gaeilge Weekly tier, where you get all these episodes a day early. You get them 4 o'clock Irish time on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. You get them without these little ads whenever I put them in. On top of that, you get one bonus episode a month, and now you also get a PDF of all the most complicated or trickiest words used in each show. So that comes along for every version of the podcast, all made specifically for that version and the words that are used in that recording. Or you can sign up for the Learn Irish Online tier. You get all the things included in the Gaeilge Weekly tier, plus you get exclusive access to shows like éisteacht, learish, smuinty sahar na gastrú, button the topic breakdown, and other benefits, including 20% discounts for all courses on learnirishonline.com. And the full membership, how much is that? It is only €7 per month plus VAT. So for most people, it works out about, I think, $8.20 or $8.30 a month. The Gaeilge Weekly tier is a bit less. It's only $3.50. The link is patreon.com/learnirishonline. All the details are over there. There's a huge amount of benefit for anyone who signs up and is learning the language. But if you don't want to, if you haven't got the time, if you're not going to get use out of it, we do not want people paying for stuff they're not going to use. We're still very grateful that you listen to Gaeilge Weekly every week, and we hope you continue to enjoy the show. Speaking of which, Rocky Madzarash, Huigum back to myself, Eglart's beginning for Monacó agus gach ag buint lei sin. Somewhere like Monaco, yeah, I would love to go and just walk around the track and also experience the glamour for one day. I'm sure it'd be expensive, even just sitting down and getting lunch would probably be a lot of money if you see she's a get alone. Like chusnoch say a lawn arrogance, but it would be cool for like one day or one afternoon, so on the lawn. If I go traveling again in the future, I would love to do that. Maybe on my way to Italy for my next trip to Italy, and Chaid Tours Gadiana Dal Ella Beidig Rockamates in Monaco, Metashan and Hungaric Lesh. Well, it's around Nadal, it's very close to the Italian border. But one of the things, of course, with Monaco, and one of the reasons I think, although it would be cool to go for the F1 element of it, I'm not sure what I actually like. The place itself is just how fancy it is. Kick off Galántacht, agus the thought. And I have no problem of going to a place like, I've never been to Denmark, but I'd love to go to Denmark. And even though it would be expensive, that's what it is. Some places are more expensive than others. They earn more money there. Their economy is good. So it's natural. It's more expensive, and you have to accept that. You know, shin. An gnáthród go méach sin níos costasí agus caiithú glacu le sin. But I think with somewhere like Monaco will be a bit different, because with Monaco, you know, let's say Copenhagen. Again, I've not been to either of these two places. I don't really feel qualified to talk about them. Ní bhfuil cólaithe an labhairt faoin dá áit. But I think I have a fair idea that somewhere like Copenhagen or even Dublin or whatever expensive places áitina chostasacha, the difference is those places are just expensive because people are earning good money there in general. Dhaoine, tilla, níos mar argads on sin. But with somewhere like Monaco, because it's so extreme and a lot of the people who live there aren't actually from there, they've moved there, Lantin Dini. Well, a Lantin Dini will in a gcónaí an sin Nias Monaco Eid. I feel like a lot of it is actually to do more so with reputation and image. So clú agus cá agus an íomhá earth nar táú an sin, and that would definitely put me off a bit. And I do think, yeah, there's a bit of a difference, you know, going somewhere expensive where you have to pay more for stuff, whatever, you know, like dul áit cíns nor chaithú beidir beagnaí níos mar agad a íoch as Déanta sin cearclóir sin mar bhíonn an down, you know, there's always going to be places more expensive than others who only buy áitina níos costasí na áitina eile. But I think the luxury elements to Monaco, or just the facade of it, ceapan sin an focail is fearr in mBéarla. I mean, it's a French word, an focail is fearr sa Frankish. But the amount of, you know, going for lunch and it's a tiny portion. It's not going to fill your portion of yoga town. Fós spáirchas down taréistit an mBéarla but because it's got a special presentation and special golden cheese on top or whatever, cost orga vor and pasta, just because of that, you're going to feel like, oh, this is worth it or whatever, and you can take your Instagram photo. It's probably plenty of places from Monacó, famous places to take Instagram photos. Áit na chaúla timpeall Monacó reach rudaig and the whole lahi Instagram and all of that. You're sitting down for a tiny glass of Prosecco, barely getting anything in it, and charging you €12. And it feels like it's okay. Part of it's to do because a lot of rich people live there. You know, chuid sin just an méid daoine le airgid in a gcónaí sin. But I think even more so than that, a big part of it is just the image again that goes with it, the idea of it an smaoinú leis, an íomhá leis, and the fakeness, really. At a bhaint leis cicmh bréagach agus atá rudaí an sin. And I think that's a bit of a difference. Even, you know, I was watching a lot of the coverage around Monacó this weekend with McFéchans nearts in the rudí of Eipeasóid team player Monacó and their shot on a show. And so they're showing you this great thing on Sky Sports, even though I don't watch Sky Sports iPhone normally watch it on the Spanish channel, taking out being McFéchans Chanán Spáine. And so, but on the Sky Sports coverage in England, on coverage on Sinner Sky Sports, Sasana, one of the things that is good is a thing called Ted's Notebook, where after every qualifying or race session, this guy called Ted, and lads out there around Ted, he just walks around the paddock and goes kind of behind the scenes and through the garages and talks to different people that are floating around the F1 paddock, basically the hub of where everything is going on during that weekend. Agus lots and will gach rud shul and shot and shin and chats with celebrities or drivers or team members or whatever. Everyone's just kind of knocking about. It's really good. There's an wa agus bíonn sé leabhart le daoine cáiliúla agus tamánaithe agus daoine difriúla. And one of the things that he noticed was he went into this area and it was tough to get a VIP band, things from Red Bull VIP section. And again, the amount of people you saw queuing up, he was able to get in because he was with the camera and the people knew him, you know, via Athna, Egnadini Air, agus bhí camera leis, agus bhí sé déanú, you know, broadcasting and lam sin, so they kind of just let him into this VIP area. But the amount of people queuing up trying to get in, you're thinking you're just trying to get in to get in. So that's like Déan Weirton, Dulasteach, just on Ruchtan of it, Agat Ernach, just to get access to the place. And I think with things like that, it's and you know, half the areas, the VIP area or the VIP zone stuff, and same thing with nightclubs or sporting events. The place where the least amount of crack is normally a VIP area. And the hot second law, nachol ein crack on, shin an area no not VIP. Because it's just people in there again trying to look cool, Dini sin ag déanú Eoraip ton cuma cool of it, or who, if you're going to a music event, the VIP area isn't normally full of people who are actually into the music. Mahin to imach cheol, zeg na, níor mór an Dini le sim ceart acu sa cheol sa area VIP, no it's not VIP. Because they're just there because of sponsors, they're partnered with the sponsor, they work for CrowdStrike or whatever, and CrowdStrike is sponsoring the event. They'll see the upper like CrowdStrike. No harm to people. I know people who work in CrowdStrike, by the way. No issue with them. They linn Eipeasóid love shoot. But that is, I guess, one of the things that I don't like about those events. I would never like to be in a VIP area. Unless there was maybe free food and drink. But there'd be a here in Ascom, not joking this here in Ascom. I changed my tune pretty quickly then. That's magam to room and it's a frolagam on sin. But no, I genuinely wouldn't. If I'm going to a club, I much prefer to be on the dance floor, just enjoying it with everybody else, my friends and normal people, Gnáthleagan, who are actually there for the DJ or for the events. Now they're on sin, lahai and DJ, no an imacht. A hain for the event itself, or if I'm going to sports events, I'd prefer just to be sitting in a normal seat instead of hospitality. You know, as far along of imahi, it's just gná siachan and not hospitality, because that's where the crack is. That's what you're there for, in my opinion. It's what I'm there for, Enos, and on the road that will misha on Sindo Erenos. But I think somewhere like Monacó, that exclusivity of it, or that kind of facade of we're going to make it in such a way, and you have to act in such a way, kahi the chuid zumper. A bheith bhealach seo agus caithí tú, you know, an rud sa agus caithí an éasca seo agus just an facade sin agus tá an rudí sin tábhaach orintanta le rudí eile, you know, in terms of whatever, putting on a nice suit for certain events, chula das a churt, lai, better events, imach dagan. I'm saying that is of course important sometimes, but when it's just too big and it's just people acting and kind of pretending like all of this is important, a chur Gaeilge goil on rud sa fad goil said tábhaach. That's what would annoy me about somewhere like Monacó. But I would love to go if anyone wants to pay for me to go. But I didn't hear ich asam hundol. Just be in contact with me. As I said, I'll change my tune pretty quickly. To my lad, my chuid me cabhrú soft happy. But anyway, yeah, I was thinking about that, and it was a really good day of motorsport to watch. I didn't watch much of the Indy 500. That's very different. That I'm sure everything in the US is a bit facade sometimes and a bit fake sometimes, especially at sporting events. Keen to go along or these US goal seed Bígí break a horn. But I think with the Indy 500, it's always kind of stuck close to its roots in terms of the people there in Indianapolis, and they're obsessed with it, and it's not as much of a VIP experience as Monacó, because it's not got the same glamour with it, Neil. So this glamour can a bit like bunch leis an Indy 500 marathon. It's more the tradition, actually, ní smó an tradition ag bunch leis an imicht. But I might be wrong, I don't know much about the Indy 500, and then the Le Mans 24 hours is probably somewhere in between the two, but ráite and idir an dá than sin in Le Mans ire an Thaoirí during the summer. But yeah, it's also now this time of year in the F1, the European season is on. So it's basically every race from May until October, September. Gach idir mBéarla, mi meolfóver, mi yearfóver. It's all races in Europe, apart from one in Canada, being the race in FAD Níos in Eoraip, seachas an cheann Canada. And watching these races almost every weekend now, because there's so many races in F1 nowadays, like fé concern Ross and so gach seachtain mar bhfuil láthart an méid sin Rossi súl in Formula 1, and you're also initially 1 week, Monaco 1 week, and then Austria the next, like féchans Monaco, Seachtain Ross an Idal an sin cint animatá an circus Imola an sin san Idal, and then going to Austria the following week ag dul an Ustar an Seachtain sa Hugan an Seachtain der Gion. You really realize like, oh wow, Europe is so cool and so diverse. Tá Europe cool, agus tá mates in ruddy, agus mates in áits an éagsúla, agus mates in éagsúla. There's so many different places, varied places, and so much variety in itself in Europe, Europe. And that's one thing I love about it. It's giving me a bit of wanderlust, I guess. Wanderlust. And some, so you're monish, no mBéarla, no feabhas Gaeilge. But that kind of eagerness to travel and fun, sin, hundul, ag tastal arish. And again, I've never really been outside of Europe. I've done a lot of travel within Europe. Talan tastal, Déanta and feabhas it's in Europe. But I've never really, apart from one day in Turkey last year, seachas one. So Turk and Uri, and I don't really count that in the Korean session in my Hirmsha. But I'm starting to think maybe next year, you know, I'm 25 next week, to my Kasu Fig Kug and Seachtain Sugan. If I'm going to do it one big more trip for 2 or 3 months, going solo traveling, or maybe with someone, just to different places, a few different countries, a few different cities, couple of Tsir, Yofrul, couple of Cahar, Yofrul, around Europe, maybe outside Europe, but I think around Europe, wow, wouldn't it be great to do maybe one big more trip next year, and that makes Gaeilge con thurs awan or Ianu on Hugan. I think it is partly because they have fun and seeing all these cool places, and again, in the F1 coverage, they often show parts of the city and different stuff going on around the track, you know, Taspáin and see the chuid, in Chahar, agus rudí to Friúla, a bhín siúl timpeall on track. But wow, I would like to go on one big more Euro trip, I think. 2 or 3 months, maybe backpacking around Europe next year. So I'm starting to think maybe. Béidir, but let's wait and see. Fun go vacuum much. But yeah, that's about it, I think, for this week, guys. Sinead, done Seachtain so. Thank you very much for listening. Gurmí Magi, éisteacht. And of course, next week is episode number 100 on Seachtain Sugan, sin agron ever ein chuid. Crazy. Think that I'm going to be speaking all about that next week by my Gláirtrishin on Seachtain Sugan. Nothing too special for it. Ní ein rud ro speisialta siúl le high on céadú agron, but we'll try to reflect a bit, I guess, on 100 episodes of Gaeilge Weekly and about 270 versions or 260 versions of the podcast out there. Ráite seachtal lagans and fudgréile agus céad agron den fudgréile. It's been a crazy ride, and we're not done, folks. Níl muid creicnithe fós. So big thank you for listening, and hopefully you'll be able to tune in for the 100th episode next week, whatever version that might be. Le cúna sé by túnán seach le haon céadú agrán den show an tachtan se hugan. Big thank you for listening, Gurmí Magi as éisteacht, and I'll speak to you next week. There I live on tachtan shogun. Goodbye and God bless. Slán agus Bannacht.
What must I turn around?